crushed by the Pelicans 123-95. The Lakers have lost 5 of their last 6 games. LeBron ended up with 32, but a lot of those came when the game was well out of hand. Things got so bad, the Lakers fans showered Crypto.com Arena with booze throughout the game. Rick, we're just 6 weeks until the play-in tournament. Lakers find themselves 9th in the West. But the question is, how far can they go this year?
Oh, at least the second round of the playoffs. I think that's a nice. I know I could go extravagant and say the conference finals. I could go the other way. I could say they're not even going to be in the playoffs. But the reality that I've said from the beginning that I thought that they were a second round playoff team, and that's still a very real possibility. I know things look really grim right now. Let's not forget, first of all, Anthony Davis was not playing and has not been playing. But perhaps most important is the rest of the Western Conference is fragile. We don't have the Phoenix. We have the Phoenix Suns without Chris Paul right now. We have the Warriors without Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green right now. We have the Memphis Grizzlies, who have never been out of the first round when it comes to the playoffs. So the entire Western Conference looks very vulnerable. And meanwhile, where the Lakers are, they don't have anybody coming up behind them. I mean, right now, they're a play-in team. I would fully expect that they're going to be a play-in team. But that puts them in the mix with the Minnesota Timberwolves, the LA Clippers, and the New Orleans Pelicans. There's nobody coming up from behind that is going to knock one of those teams out. The Portland Trail Blazers have decided that they want to tank and get ready for next season. So, with all that said, you put them in a tournament with the Timberwolves, the Clippers without Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, the New Orleans Pelicans without Zion Williamson, and it's very gettable for them to win a game in that play-in tournament and get into the playoffs. And then, depending on who they're going to see, Phoenix Suns without Chris Paul are a very beatable team, as we've seen in the last 2 games that they've played without Chris Paul. Golden State Warriors without Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green are not the same team, giving up 21-point leads or 19-point leads in the fourth quarter to the Dallas Mavericks. So the door is still wide open. As bad as they look, as lifeless as they looked against the New Orleans Pelicans, we're still 4 or 5 weeks away from them having to be what they need to be. And once you get all those old guys together and they can just focus and they have AD and they have the task at hand, then I believe you're going to see the best of the LA Lakers. And whether that's good enough or not still remains to be seen. But as of right now, there's no reason to believe that they still couldn't pull off a first-round upset.
Slick Rick. You almost got me, Slicky Ricky. But you did what most people do. The Lakers, I'm just going to say, they're not good, man. And they don't, in my opinion, they may not even win a play-in game because no one fears to. Look, I'm a LeBron fan. I love what he does, but it's not good enough right now. And what you did was talk about all the other teams in the Western Conference and how they're struggling because of injury. The Lakers are struggling due to injury. But you made them healthy against injured teams. They're not healthy. AD's not on the court. Chris Paul's not on the court. So as we see the Lakers right now and what they're presenting, look at last night. You think the New Orleans Pelicans in a play-in game are going to be afraid to play that team? No, they're not. And they will believe that they can beat that team. Experience or not, when you get to this point where you're playing as poorly as the LA Lakers, everyone wants you. Everyone wants your blood because you were just on top. And all the expectations were that you were going to be this great team, even this year. And they have fallen apart. Now, you can talk about, like I said, the Phoenix Suns. You can talk about the LA Clippers. All these teams that you talk about continue to beat the Lakers, whether they're healthy or not. And so with that being my history and track record all season long, how can I buy into this team that is just LeBron James-centric in year 50 with Russell Westbrook doing what he's been doing all year? I can't rely on that. And I definitely can't rely on Anthony Davis, as a good a talent as he is. Even when healthy, he hasn't proven that he can get this team over the hump. So I'm not even going to rely on them to win a play-in game. I think they missed the playoffs.
I like it, Greg. Russell Westbrook doing what he's been doing. 7 turnovers, 1 assist last night. But I promised a friend I would not crush Westbrook this week, so I got to hold myself to that. But the question was, how far can they go? And, Rick is kind of there. He almost got there. Rick, I'll help nudge you over the finish line. With a healthy LeBron and Anthony Davis.
Thank you, AD.
With a healthy LeBron and Anthony Davis, they will win the championship. But they have to be healthy. That's the only problem. And I say this, Rick, we talked on my podcast last week. Again, if AD and LeBron are healthy, what happens in the bubble? They win the championship. If LeBron and AD are healthy, what happens last year? They lead the Suns 2-1. Then AD goes down, the bottom falls out, and they're toast. Right now, Anthony Davis is out. So I don't want to hear about, the sky is falling. The Clippers beat them. The sky is falling. They lost to the Pelicans by 30. Well, of course, they're missing Anthony Davis. Now the question becomes, can Frank Vogel, yes, Frank Vogel, figure this out? I had the great stats team here at Undisputed dig this up for me. The Lakers are tied for the most blown leads of 10 or more points in the league this year. That, folks, is a coach thing. Now, I know Vogel's dealing with like a roster of a bunch of one-year guys. They just got here. Still no Kendrick Nunn because he's the savior. Ha, ha, ha. But if I told you, Greg and Rick, back in November, that Stanley Johnson and Austin Reeves would be playing pivotal roles for the Lakers heading into the play-in tournament, you would have laughed. You would have said, Austin Reeves, the undrafted kid out of Oklahoma? Stanley Johnson, the guy who was a total disaster in Detroit. I don't want to crush him, but go look up the history of him in Detroit. He was a first-round pick, lottery guy. It just did not work out. That's who Frank Vogel's playing. Vogel has a lot to figure out. I think the first move is move Westbrook to the bench. Make him your sixth man. He's not going to like it. Hey, you don't like it, go home. Fine, we'll figure it out without you. But right now, the Lakers are not in a good position, as Greg said. And Rick, you did miss this. 22 games left. They're only 2.5 up on the Pelicans for the final play-in spot. So there's an actual chance that they miss the playoffs. That's on the table right now. But if AD gets healthy, it's fine. I know that's a massive range, miss the playoffs or win the championship. But that's the reality when you've got Anthony Davis, a top 10, top 12 player in the league, injured, Rick. That's just the reality of the Lakers right now.
Yeah, but the Pelicans are in the play-in tournament, so it's not a matter of what they're up on them. It's how many games they're up on the Portland Trailblazers.
Yeah.
Whether it's 9th or 10th, they're in the mix. You guys have given me a lot to unpack here. I'm going to try to do it as succinctly as I possibly can. J-Mac, you said champ. Did I hear you correctly? You were saying they could win the
If you have LeBron, you're in the mix
say,
for the championship. That's a fact.
Did you say that with your chest, or were you trying to sneak that in the back door? What?
Rocked up chest. Yes, sir.
I'm not ready to go quite that far because one of the reasons, and you put all this on Frank Vogel, okay? I believe the Indiana Pacers are the other team that has had the most blown leads in the league, and they're coached by Rick Carlisle. And if you're going to tell me that Rick Carlisle is not a good coach, then we have a whole
they
other
don't have talent. Don't bring up the Indiana Pacers. Come on.
Exactly. And you just mentioned it. You just mentioned that Frank Vogel is having to play Stanley Johnson and Austin Reeves. What part of his coaching is this is the personnel that I have to play?
Three Hall of Famers?
I don't have my other personnel. And if he's not playing Austin Reeves and Stanley Johnson, then who are you suggesting that he should play in order for this team to win a championship?
I don't know. Maybe the guys LeBron brought in?
Okay, like?
The guys Pelinka brought in? Carmelo Anthony, he's been hurt. Trevor Ariza, he's been hurt. At some point, Greg and Rick, you've got
Frank has had to play
Lakers
these guys.
Injuries have impacted these guys.
Yes, no, without question. And they've impacted Frank Vogel and what he's able to do. Now, look, I said from the very beginning that Frank Vogel wasn't going to be able to handle these personalities. He wasn't going to be able to tell Russ no. He wasn't going to be able to tell LeBron, hey, I need you to play defense. Stop going for Kareem's record. I need you to be a playmaker. I knew that Frank didn't or wasn't going to be able to wrestle with all of these big personalities and egos. But he's also been dealt a really bad hand. So that's why J-Mac, as optimistic as you may be that Anthony Davis comes back and they can win the way they did in the bubble, I can't go quite that far. I'm not that excited about this Lakers team. Greg, now to you. And with this idea, you're right. I cooked the books there a little bit. Talked about the Lakers being healthy, talked about all these other teams that have injuries. But here's the distinction. The Lakers, with the pieces that they have, even right now, these are all guys that have been to the playoffs multiple times. When you look at the Suns and you look at the Warriors and who they're leaning on, especially when it comes to the Warriors, they're leaning on a lot of guys that haven't been there before. And you're saying, yes, that the Lakers don't have that intimidation factor that they've had in the past. I agree with you. They don't right now because all of these guys with the Warriors, the young guys with the Warriors,